You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Greetings and welcome, everybody, to today's episode of Exemplary Practices in Catholic Teaching and Learning. We have a treat for us today with the International Catholic University, currently doing business as CatholicThinkers.com. But before I begin with the introductions, Father Peter, would you lead us in prayer?
Sure. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Mm-hmm. We ask our Blessed Mother for her intercessory power. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Our Lady, Seat of Wisdom,
pray for us.
Saint Thomas Aquinas,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Peter. So to introduce our guest today, I really am overbrimming with excitement. This is just such an incredible treat for us. Dr. Randall Smith is professor in Scanlon Foundation Endowed Chair in Theology at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. His areas of research are many: moral theology, historical theology, sexual ethics, faith and culture, sacred architecture, and architecture and urbanism. In short, he is who I want to be when I grow up. In addition, Dr. Smith is the president of International Catholic University, now doing business as CatholicThinkers.com, which is online at icucourses.com, but CatholicThinkers.com. He brings with him Erin Dowdy, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Officer at CatholicThinkers.com. And I'd like to welcome both of you today. Dr. Smith, take it away.
Right. Thank you so much for having us. Erin, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule there at the office on the 5th floor in LA, where we have all our employees, as Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Officer. She's very, very busy. As many of you know, actually, no, she's just a mom and she has 5 kids. And as you know, when you have 5 kids, taking time out of your day is even harder than being a chief operating officer. Anyway, so as many of you know, I don't know exactly, what you want to know from us. But because Erin really is, involved in all the nuts and bolts of stuff, I asked her to come, and she very kindly said she would come. But as many of you know, but not all of you may know, the International Catholic University, which started out as Catholic Educational TV, actually, in a sort of combination that Ralph McInerney, who is a professor of mine in graduate school at the University of Notre Dame, began. And he originally had them as kind of half-hour segments, and then they were transmitted on, they were broadcast on EWTN. And then not too long after that, I'm not exactly sure how long, I think, anyway, Bob Mish might know, but he entered into an agreement with Holy Apostles College, and then some of these courses were offered in the early days then of Holy Apostles College. We had a bunch of what we call our classic courses. Now we call them classic. Some of our professors have now gone to their eternal reward. People like Father Benedict Ashley, wonderful people, Father William Wallace, and others. Ralph McInerney himself, of course. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, we went on, and then I was only brought on to this project. I was a graduate student of Ralph McInerney's during those days when some of the latter one of these would have been, well, actually, probably all of these were being done while I was his a graduate student. But I didn't actually get brought on to the project or, the International Catholic University until after Ralph's death, actually, in 2005. And then actually a couple of years afterwards, Ralph, in the latter part of his life, left, was very serious in continuing this and trying to see this go forward. And he left it kind of in the hands of a good friend of mine, John Hittinger, who's the brother, you may know of Russ Hittinger. Anyway, and he's a professor here. And at the time, he actually was the provost at the University of St. Thomas. Since then, he's moved on to higher things. Namely, he's become a member of the faculty. So any case, But Ralph left it with him and thinking, well, maybe, our relationship with Holy Apostles College had kind of diminished in very sincere ways. And so maybe, John could use it here. We've never really effectively been able to incorporate that material here. Anyway, then John, knowing he was really, really busy with things, brought me on. And early on, my thought was that I was coming into this thing. I mean, I knew of it, but I hadn't really had much to do with it. That I was brought in to, produce new content. So I very earnestly sort of set up to try to figure out how to kind of modernize the way we were doing things. When Ralph originally did it, Ralph McInerney, it was a bit rudimentary, right? But it was video and audio, and he was kind of ahead of his time. But it was meant for EWTN originally, and certain kinds of segments and a certain amount that he thought people on television could actually, take in and would be interested in. But then I thought, well, we could do something, we weren't bound by those limitations anymore. And so we could do something more, and maybe longer courses, et cetera, et cetera. So I then very quickly had us do, this is also because of the interest that John Hittinger had, several courses on the work of John Paul II. John Hittinger is now, though he's still sort of the chairman of the board of CatholicThinkers.com, right? He has started something called the John Paul II Forum. And then actually he's got a John Paul II Institute now that he's working on through the University of St. Thomas. Very interesting. Anyway, so this has been a deep interest of his for a good while. And he said, hey, something we should do in conjunction with this is do a whole series of courses on the encyclicals, the great encyclicals of John Paul II. And I said, yeah, we should. Anyway, we did a bit of that. And then I realized, again, just as very quick background, that we were running out of money. I didn't think of myself as being brought on to think about any of that stuff. But then I started to realize, we can't keep making courses because it costs, particularly video, because it costs us a lot of money and we don't have a lot of money. And so I asked the person who was kind of handling our finances at the time when we would go bankrupt, when we would be completely out of money. He said, well, about basically 6 or 7 months. And I said, well, we can't have that. Like this. So anyway, we took some time to take care of that. Erin now handles all this. So we got our operating expenses down to, so basically in the last couple of years, what we've been doing is getting our operating expenses down to almost nothing. Okay. I don't get paid. Erin gets paid almost nothing, but she does get paid a little bit. And we then basically what we did is we, digitized all or almost all, we're in the process, we're finishing up digitizing all our stuff that we have. Now, more recently, over this past year, we've gotten a grant and we're going to actually produce more courses again, right? But it took us some time to sort of figure out where we were. We tried over those intervening years as well, while we were digitizing, doing stuff, to enter into agreements with others, right? Like Holy Apostles College or Formed or different people. And we weren't particularly successful in that. And so anyway, now we've decided, and this is the last part of my little story, is to put all our content online for free. And all we need then is, and we're trying to raise the operating expenses we have. Basically, Erin needs to be paid something for the amazing work she does. And then try to just raise money for new content over the next, 5 years. And we'll see how the thing goes. So anyway, that's the story. I don't know what else you want to, and there were a series of questions. I'm sorry, I put them over there. But any questions about that or, anything else? I mean, I don't know what else you want to know.
Well, before we jump into questions, Erin, do you want to say anything?
I would just say that we have spent the last several years just really trying to figure out exactly what is needed from what we have. So we have this amazing classics collection that really needs to be more available than it has been. And I think that we have figured out a way to be where people are. We're trying, doing our best to make the delivery method something really user friendly. So we're just going to take advantage of YouTube and podcast channels to make it something that people can stumble across and share and spread the word. Because we know that our material it's not new, it's not flashy. We don't have a Bishop Barron or, a huge personality sort of
standing on the moon or something, right? Barron's going next, I think.
Smith,
here we are on the moon, and yes. there's a cross here. And now, we never had that kind of money. and we don't now.
So we are learning, I think, as we go more and more about what exactly is needed. And I think that one thing that we hear over and over again is that professors want to offer good classes and are really struggling to find really great material. So even though we're not new and flashy, we can definitely get people going on the right path with what we have.
Let me just add one more thing to that, something that Erin's reminded me about. It's very important. I always thought from the very beginning, and I continue to think, that one of the issues in so-called distance learning or hybrid learning was, that people sort of thought that, I don't think Ralph thought this, but anyway, but a lot of people had thought, well, we'll just plug people into the computer, right? And then we'll give them, 36 lectures, and that's basically a semester full of lectures, and then you just go online and then you take tests, and then you got it. I never, again, I don't think Ralph ever thought that. And that's why he had shorter courses, and I've never thought that. I always saw our materials as being, let's put it this way, like adjuncts. In other words, like aids to a faculty member. So that a faculty member, I always said, you're in control of your course, right? You would use our material. Sorry, this room is, I have to get them to turn off automatic thing. So I have to wake up the room every now and again. This is where I give my classes from. And so I'm constantly doing this during my class too. Students just laugh every time. So, again, I like the fact actually that we've kind of kept it sort of short, because then it makes it material that a faculty member can incorporate into their class the way, not exactly the way, but analogously the way you incorporate, say, a text, right? In other words, you say, oh, so we're going to read, Plato's Phaedo or something like that, right? Well, and here might be a lecture, somebody who's talking about Plato's Phaedo, or in the case of, for example, William Wallace, Father Wallace, or Father Ashley, they have books. And so they did a series of lectures that sort of went with their book. So, for example, with Father Ashley's class on Living the Truth in Love, which is kind of scriptural moral theology, I just sort of, incorporated that in so that they would sort of read a chapter from Ashley, and then they would listen to Ashley talking about that chapter, 2 chapters in his book. Right. And so it was an easy way to get the students to kind of do that. And that was nice, because then I could put that outside of class, the kind of lecture-y part, and the reading book and the lecture part. And then when they came into class, then I could just do what I always want to do, right, which is the discussion part, the Socratic dialogue part. Right. I always thought that if you were going to put anything outside on that, you could do the sort of lecture-y sort of thing. And anyway, so that's how I incorporated Ashley, and that's how I would incorporate it. I didn't have a chance, and I was going to do a Wallace, sort of a philosophy and science class. It didn't end up happening here, but anyway, so that was always my vision of the thing. We had 2 audiences then, as a summary. I sort of thought, well, there would be people who would be adult education, right, who would say to themselves, I didn't really get this kind of Catholic education that I wanted, or I'm not getting a formation, or, I really want to have a deeper understanding of my faith about the Trinity or Christology or sacraments or the modernist crisis. So I'll go listen to these, 8 lectures, 10 lectures, whatever they happen to have done. Or then, this resource for faculty members to incorporate something into their classrooms, particularly during this time of COVID. Unfortunately, again, we just haven't had the kind of people haven't known about us in a way. I think a lot of faculty members could have spared themselves a lot of time by sort of, instead of making their own videos, sort of using our lectures. I suggested it several times here that, I know you've got all these people out making these kind of shell courses and stuff like that. Why don't you just use our stuff and then have your faculty members? And my suspicion is that the university didn't do that only because they wanted to monetize it themselves, right? They wanted to get these shells, and then they were like, no. See, if we use your stuff, we can't monetize it in the same way that we want to do here. And I thought that was immoral, but that's another issue. Anyway, the point was, I said to them, our stuff is free, but I think that was precisely the problem in a way, which is, and I said, but look, it's just like if we charged you $10, it would be just like buying a book. You buy Plato's Phaedo and a little, or the big collected works of Plato. That doesn't change you. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm not paying tuition because I had to buy Plato. So, but I couldn't quite bring this sensibility to administrators. But anyway.
Well, with us, Dr. Smith, you were speaking to the choir. I went through easily 24 of those video sets the audio sets when I was a student at Holy Apostles. And I liked them so much that I stayed. And they can tell you I've made some kind of an imprint on the past decade because of these lectures. And it was really distressing that we had to end the partnership that we had at the time because of the federal definition of a credit hour. Mm-hmm. And so over the past decade, we've got 55 adjunct faculty members working, 3 fully online master's degree programs, and now an entire undergraduate program, which we didn't have at the time of our relationship with International Catholic University. That these resources are going to be available again is just an incredible delight and an incredible opportunity for us to re-engage our relationship with one another. But let's open it up to the community. Father Peter is going to have to leave in a bit.
So it's just that I heard free, which is really great. So, Dr. Tulin Wilson, if there's a way that we can collaborate with this super free stuff, many of those professors taught me. Father Sheehan taught me. Of course, Father Malay taught me. Father Mosey taught me. And there are lots of them. In fact,
same for me.
Keep on going on. So they're superb. They're excellent teaching. If there's any way where we're not in the business of making money, but we need to make our ends meet, and we also need to give a just wage to our employees who are part of our family. We do emphasize that the Holy Apostles family. Same time, they also have children that I lack, and they have husbands and wives and all that. So that's a need that we have. Same time as though I think that we can, in a way that other schools have not, really take you up on your offer and collaborate with you. Sebastian and Dr. Tulin Wilson, you should know with greater clarity, because you work more in a practical way, of how that could be possible. But it seems like wonderful news to me. So.
Yeah, if I can just say one last thing about that. I mean, it's as Erin has reminded me, because she's the practical one. Of course, anything you can do our goal has always been just to get this material out there. When we charge some minor, fee, it wasn't so much we just sort of thought, well, people, if you give it to them for free, they don't really care about it that much. So if we charge them $5 or $20, it's better. But the point is, we never really want to make a lot of money, but we of course do have to keep going, right, in the same way. And so anything you can do to give us a donation for things if you find it helpful is good. But yeah, we're not asking for, we're never a profitable institution, but again, we just have to pay Erin Dowdy's salary. And of course, anything we get, we have a whole series of things. We have a grant, so we have a whole series of exciting things coming up that we have that are being made. For example, we have a whole course on logic to go with Ed Hauser's new book on logic that's come out from Catholic University Press, Marriage and Family from Chris Kaiser, my friend who's out at Loyola Marymount, who's done the 7 myths of Catholic marriage or something like that. I mean, he's a well-known writer. And then I think I haven't gotten this started yet, a course on the works of Alistair McIntyre by David Solomon, one of his very best friends in the world. So anyway, we have exciting things, but the only way we can do that, obviously, is we have a little bit of money. Right. Anyway, sorry. Wake up, bro.
Okay.
Wake up.
I'll have to go. So Sebastian, Dr. Tulin, if you have any creative ideas of relying on these wonderful resources, that'd be really, really super. So anyway, God bless everyone. Thank you for your super work. And
Thank you, Father Peter.
Erin and Dr. Smith, you're going to be my new best friends. There are ways that we can help promote this. There are ways that we can help integrate it. We are currently in the middle of a course redevelopment project of our own, and we want to redevelop 180 of our courses. The idea that what
does that, if I may ask, what does that mean for you? I mean, redevelopment in what sense, if I may ask, right? So what do you have now, and what do you want? Morally, and what are your goals here in terms of the redevelopment?
Let me hand it over to Dr. Cynthia Tulin herself, who is the ombudswoman of the redevelopment project.
Ombudswoman. I like that. I'm going to put it on the CV. So what we're trying to do, first of all, is make sure that there's, when people go into our courses, they will recognize them as being a Holy Apostles course, same kind of format in every course. And we are also making sure that we advance. I mean, when you think back to the beginning days of ICU where you had a video and that was about it, we need to grow and make sure that we have more content and also some engagement with modern scholars, and just up our courses to a more professional level, I guess is what I would say. The content, I think, overall, what we teach is good. But to raise it up to something where people look at it and they're impressed, this is really good. We do give a good education, I think. But listening to what you're saying, I teach one and triune God among some of the other. I'm a dogmatic and moral theologian. And I would love to go back and use the courses, for instance, the Trinity course, and just include that in some of my, have them look at that and then would talk about it and, get something going. Now that we have the Zoom capability, we could actually have a discussion about the tapes, or I guess you're getting them digitalized. So and
Erin, that one's digitalized, right? Then we have the Triune God almost all of it's digitized. We started with things that were most popular, which was Ralph McInerney's courses, actually, not strangely enough, but we can check on that. But, these things, we've got almost all of this kind of digitized. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think that would be a tremendous asset to Holy Apostles if we could use that and combine it with the teaching of the professor. Teaching.
Right, that was always the intent. We do have things, we had to have things online, right? Online resources for people who wanted to kind of do it like as a course. And I always had offered people like, well, look, if you really want a test bank or a quiz bank or something like that, we could make one up for you, et cetera. But again, I wasn't going to do that for everything unless people were interested in it. Because again, my sense of it was I never wanted to replace the faculty member with a video, right? I always thought, look, again, people read books and then they come to class and they talk about books. And so then they come to class and then you can have a discussion in class, and then you wouldn't spend class time just, reading the text or, again, that's something you could do. And I've done that, you read over text, and sometimes you lecture about the text. But the nice thing would be is you could just sort of say, yeah, here, go do that. But then we're going to come and talk about it. Right. Yeah.
But see here, most of the teaching that we would probably use this, and I can't speak for the on-campus faculty, but I'm the dean of online, so I can see that being of great value in online. Now that we have Zoom, we could actually be holding, class sessions, tape them for people who want to come and see it later, that they're working or something. So I see that as being something that would be useful. It would also give, you can't beat some of the people, for reputation that you have on the courses. So these people can walk away having heard the words of a master. Yeah. And that would be very good.
I think that's what Ralph had in mind, right? That you would get people like Father William Wallace, or you would get like Father Mosey and patristics, or you would get Benedict Ashley, or, again, you get people who were sort of, Tom Hibbs, who's now, he used to be president of the University of Dallas. And, so you'd get people who were kind of top notch and, who would do this. And then you'd sort of say, oh, yeah, that's a pretty impressive sort of bunch of people.
Yeah. And then what we would have to do, Sebastian and I would have to contact the on-campus dean, Lisa Galino, Dr. Lisa Galino, and talk to her about what she would see as of use for on-campus students. Of course, right now, not all of them are going to.
How many on-campus students do you usually have? Obviously, we're in a very odd circumstance now, but how many would you? Well, if you didn't have the pandemic, like before the pandemic, how many did you have?
Oh, well, we have a large residential priests, seminarians, and sisters, probably over 100. I don't know the exact count anymore.
Okay.
but easily over 100. And then we do have a few commuters. But the point is, it would be useful to that population also because most of them are English as a second language. And so for them to be able to sit there and push the button and go back over what the professor said on the tape and then go and talk about it in class, that would, repetition is really good especially when English isn't your first language. So I can see where that would be very helpful. It isn't going to replace professors, but it would be a good additional resource.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it would be nice for the professors who are teaching a few of these courses of ours to have something from which to maybe pull if that would help them. I also think that one of the things we're trying to look into is a little more some level of multimedia, since we do, over the last decade or so in education, there's a lot more talk about people who have different learning styles. Not everybody learns from just reading a bunch of material and spitting it back. Yeah. Some people really do need the visuals or hearing certain things. So any resources that we can use for professors to pull in other ideas, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that this would accomplish that. Although I think that different professors, I think we always have to remember different people teach differently.
Right.
And although we want to make sure that our online program is something that the minute you go into it, you say, oh, this is a Holy Apostles program, a Holy Apostles course. But I do think, although there are certain things that have to be in each course, that we have to give the professors the freedom to teach the way they want to. However, that being said, it would not be bad to have supplementary material in there from someone with a great name, so that if the student could also look at that and get a better sense of what's going on. So,
I think it would be helpful, for example, if you said, well, look, this is the course essentially in terms of lecture, right? That Father James Shaw taught at Georgetown for 45 years or something. His course in political philosophy. If you do that, but the point is, you say, well, this is basically he recorded for us the course he would teach, right? Because he was largely lecturing, and so you say, well, look, this is the course he taught. Shaw's course is your course, but then we're gonna read the books he wanted you to read. And you're gonna listen to Shaw talk about it, and then we're gonna come talk about it, which is the thing that undoubtedly in some of the large lecture classes, when he did those, there was less opportunity for, unless they divided it up. And I never talked to him about how, over the years it worked. But I think that, again, you say, who's your professor? And the answer is, well, like any great philosophical project, the answer is, well, your professor is Aristotle or Plato or Thomas Aquinas or Augustine through Shaw, but through you. Again, you're the student, and ultimately you're the one who has to, take all this in various and sundry ways. But again, I'm a big proponent of that. Yeah, the faculty, maybe we're not replacing them. They just have the role they have is as kind of director, and they use it in the ways they want, in the areas they want. That's why, we're not charging. This is why I'm happier about this. If you said to yourself you were teaching political theory or something, political philosophy, and you said, well, I want to use the first 10 lectures of Shaw, but I don't want to, he gave us a whole bunch. The point is, well, you can. Or you can use 1, 3, and 5, and 7. Again, you can do what you need to do as far as that. We were perfectly happy to have people do that, mix and match and put things together. So for example, in a Trinity course, if you said, well, I want to use the Trinity, but then I want to go into Christology. The point is, well, we have both. So you can do both, right? If you have time to sort of enter into both, right? We always wanted to just be a resource.
Yeah. So, certainly different professors are going to choose different material, even within a course. And I think that that's the value also, because we have some professors that are geniuses, actually. I'm not one of them. But we do have some that are geniuses, and I'll tell you, they could easily just say, well, you just want to see the last half of this lecture because it's really good, or you want to see this lecture. So, I think it's something that's doable.
What do you, I mean, if I could just ask, what do you have now? I mean, again, do you have online lectures in the way that, we do? Or is it like mostly kind of online stuff? I mean, again, what do you generally have right now in terms of your distance courses? Actually, what I'm talking about.
It varies by course. Some people, like Father Milady, everything is already up and running. You can just push a button and listen to him, and then you can also read the lecture. He has teaching assistants. So it's, he's involved, and, people walk away and they should know a lot if they actually applied themselves.
This is Brian Milady, the Dominican, I take it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure. I thought I heard that.
Yeah. So, and he also was very good friends with Ralph. And,
no, he has one of our courses on, I'm sorry, Nature and Supernature.
Nature and Grace.
Nature and Grace.
Yeah, Nature and Grace. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So it varies from person to person. And I think that's good because, everybody wants to teach in a different way. Everybody wants to emphasize different things. We are looking for more uniformity than we've had in the past, and that's part of the redevelopment. But there's a difference between redeveloping and bringing out the best in people and putting them in a box. And that's what I don't want to do.
No, and I agree. And see, that was sort of our goal, right? I mean, part of the thing I've seen even recently here is this desire on the part of our administration. And I'm not just moaning about our administration. I think it's a natural, obvious thing, is to make these shells. But then their idea was like, well, so you as a professor make this shell, and then we'll have graduate students or we'll have others, adjuncts or something, like use your shell. In which case it's like, well, then you're not really the instructor, right? You're just like, okay, you program. It's like, I mean, even before this current thing, I never wanted, Erin can say this, well, don't say it, sorry. The point is, I never wanted to do that. I always thought, look, you have to take control of your course. You're the instructor. And, use these resources as you see fit. I did with, Ashley's course when I was asked to do a kind of distance hybrid thing, and I was experimenting. I had done something for the Catholic Distance University, didn't just ask because I was interested in some of this stuff because I'd gotten involved and didn't like it, thought this was not the way to do things. And, then I was asked to do this kind of distance thing here, and I used Father Ashley's because I thought, well, this, again, people can access it at a lot of different times. Okay, they can read the book, they can see Ashley's lecture. I had quizzes on the book and the lecture, and then we would have sections where they would come talk to me, and I thought it worked very, very well. But again, it was also an intensive, like summer distance course, and so I had to come up with something pretty quickly, and so I did. Anyway, but again, I've always thought, I was able to do that because I decided, well, I'll just use Ashley's thing, right? Or as I think somebody else might have said, I want to use John Haas's thing, right? On bioethics, or I want to do anyway.
Sure. Sebastian, you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I want to reference at this point, and I can point to it in the notes, on the show notes. Dr. Smith gave an excellent interview to one of the WCAT radio show hosts on the value of face-to-face education and face-to-face engagement. And the ability of us to use materials like this in our own face-to-face learning environments is incredible. The ability of our faculty community, our online faculty community, to use this in the online courses they teach in order to foster more proactive instructor engagement with the students is also incredible. This is our peanut butter and chocolate moment for the 2020s. This is just an incredible opportunity for us.
Our thing was, Ralph's thing was, right, mostly philosophy and theology, and then some history and a little bit of art. And look, he was primarily trying to get that in because, again, he thought, I think, that there were elements here, really important elements that had to do with what we might call in theology, an understanding of the faith, that great philosophical theological tradition that that people weren't getting. And, he only was able to do so much. I mean, he did a lot in a short amount of time. And so, I'd like to do more of the English and, again, but that it's, as that's a really difficult thing. So we've been talking about finding somebody to do Dante and Milton and Homer and the Aeneid, etc. And that's and then art and architecture. I'm actually have in my head, and I'm going to approach somebody soon. Again, we just needed money, right? I mean, approaching somebody who would do church architecture throughout the history and stuff. So we, but part of it before, I hope you understand, was also when I would come up with these ideas, right, which I had in the beginning, like I was, bursting with we'll do this and we'll do that, we'll do that. Then pretty quickly it was like, oh, Randy, that costs money, right? You can't just do it with nothing. And then I very quickly realized we don't have a lot of money. Okay, so we better think more practically, right? And so there's a lot of things that I wanted to do. I'm sure there's things Ralph wanted to do. And but at a certain point, I mean, again, Erin can say that when we were thinking about some of these ideas, the question was, how much demand do you think there would be? If we didn't have to think about that so much, right? If we just sort of said, this is stuff our donors would be interested in, right? Like if we did a course in, church architecture and our donors said, bravo, right? Like, we love that. We'll give you more money. Then we would just do courses out the wazoo. We would, if we did a course on Dante and everybody said, we love you, we'd go, okay. Then, again, we wouldn't have to market. We wouldn't have to worry so much about what do grandparents, come on, wake up, bro. What kind of, courses would grandparents want to send their grandchildren? Which is one of our concerns at a certain point, right? I mean, we would do stuff on every encyclical of John Paul II because John Hittinger loves that and wants to do it, and so we would, right? We'd make courses just left and right. But we've had to think about how much money we had. We had to think about marketability before. Now we kind of don't. So, for example, if you at some places like Holy Apostles College or any other place said, hey, what would be really helpful for us is if we had a series of courses on, and this is sort of why we ended up, I'm having a whole course on logic done, because some people were like, yeah, you have this little course on logic, but it's not really enough. If we could really have something that would help with logic, et cetera. And I said, we can do that. Right. And but then we sort of thought we need a whole thing. Anyway, and that's why we're doing that. But I thought the reason that we could do a whole thing on logic, just to finish up there, is that, again, what most professors want to do in class is go over problems, right? They want to talk about stuff. They don't want to lecture about it. And so I thought, well, we could have Ed Hauser, who wrote this book on logic, give you the 15 or 20 minute, little lecture that you would give, and then go over one or two problems. And then the professor then would say, okay, now I'm going to go over some problems with you. And we're going to talk about, the logic of this problem or this problem or this problem. And anyway, and that, again, somebody had asked me about that. And I said, I've been thinking about it. I think it's a good idea. And I kind of moved it up to the front.
Did somebody ask about Nicomachean ethics?
No one's asked me about that yet, but, that's always a possibility.
Now,
look, if people have a need, we can sort of think around. I mean, I know people, et cetera, et cetera, and you may know people. And the point is I know people who could do a good course in the Nicomachean ethics, right? Who could give you. But then part of the issue, if somebody said to me, hey, how about the Nicomachean ethics? I'd say, well, what's useful for you, right? Like, in other words, do you want a 32 course lecture series like Father Katursky did for the teaching company on Nicomachean ethics? Or do you want 8? Right? Like, what would be helpful? Somebody has their hand up. Mr. Gentile has genteelly raised his hand. Yeah.
I guess my question is, would you consider these undergraduate or graduate courses? How could a course, say, supplement a graduate course for review? And how would you avoid duplication of videos? So a student go through, say, an undergraduate course and then found themselves repeating the same.
Well, that I assume, like anything, is something that the institution would have to think about, right? Coordinating. I get that. I mean, we have that here, right? So we have students who come in, if they're undergraduates, and we have an MA in theology, and we kind of say, well, you're going to do the MA in theology now. And the point is, so what do you require for that? And the point is, well, some of our upper level undergraduate courses can be used, but the point is, we just make sure they don't. Right? Because we said, again, at a master's level, they have to take that course, that upper level course, but then they have to do extra work. But then it's the registrar and the dean. The graduate program, the dean, et cetera. Their job is to make sure that they're not, as it were, double dipping in it, to put it that way. You just have to make sure that happens. And it depends. Again, like in how you want to do it. The point is, it wouldn't be so bad if it were a little part. So if you, for example, you said, we're reading Plato's Republic or Augustine's Confessions, and you're like, again, here at the University of St. Thomas, for example, people have undoubtedly read that book in 2 or 3 different classes, depending upon what they take, right? Which isn't such a bad thing, right? Remember when I was a graduate student at the University of Dallas, people had read Plato's Republic in both theology and philosophy and politics. It was kind of like, geez, everybody reads Plato's Republic. And it was like, how many times are you going to read Plato's Republic? But so that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you want to be careful, right? That you're not, overdoing that. But I take it it's not so, do you understand? I think it's not so much different as saying we don't want to use the same book over and over and over again for every class. We don't want to use the same lecture. It's not bad to have it do it twice. If you're sort of saying, well, we're reading the Confessions in English, or like in theology, and then somebody else goes, well, we're reading the Confessions in philosophy. And the point is, then you use the same lecture. It wouldn't be horrible, but if the discussion were different and the requirements and the papers. And so that's, I guess, what I would say about that. Does that make sense?
I'm just curious, were they were designed as graduate or undergraduate?
I think Ralph had in mind largely sort of what I would call entry-level graduate, so like master's kind of level, right? Yep. I don't think he thought this was like freshman stuff or high school stuff. Yep. Of course, as you know, you get gifted students who could absolutely do this, right? I don't think there's any of these, but there are some of them, right? Again, like Father Wallace's course in the philosophy of science, which I think is a bit more definitely like graduate level stuff, right? Does it make sense? And it just depends. And Ralph's course on his Thomas Aquinas, the first one, is very, very accessible. His course on metaphysics, somewhat less so, right? So I think he thought graduate level largely. And then he was going to give, like with Holy Apostles College, he wanted then people to be able to get graduate level credit, and he knew what a graduate level thing. But again, not PhD, right? Because you don't lecture at the last levels of the PhD program. So I don't think he had that in mind. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I think he had MA program sort of stuff. Like it needs to be tough enough and serious enough that you could do that.
I went through the Trinity and Christology classes, and I would say because Trinity is, low-level graduate course for us. Christology is the next level up. And I thought, a lot of the material, this was back in the 90s when, I think it was 98, wasn't it, Bob, when they came on?
Yes.
It was 98. So I was teaching, and I remember looking at it and thinking, okay, this is good. It wasn't enough for a class.
Yeah.
But the point is, it was definitely entry-level graduate for Trinity, but a little harder for Christology, which is what it should be, because you have to have Trinity first. So, James, for you, what I was thinking is that's something that you could actually, if you had the videos or digital copies, whatever, it would be good for the people taking the comprehensive exams to just sit there and watch that, watch those two. So, I really thought they were good courses, but again, we don't have a doctorate level here, so it doesn't matter to us that they don't go that high. But
I was thinking on those levels, so that's great.
I think we always thought of them at that level, and then as I was thinking about them for you early on when I was engaged in this, I thought, well, I think they're good, but again, I never thought of them as enough, right? And when I was thinking about them for my own course, I thought, well, I can't just have them do this, right? Can't, I'm going to have to mix and match, or I'm going to have to use them and then do my own thing, right? Again, have my own discussions about the book, or have my own discussions about the lecture or book and lecture, or, and then I'm going to have them read some secondary. Again, I just realized, this is good as a kind of core, but then I'm going to have to, make a course out of a piece. Oh, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, so you're just using it as a resource, which makes sense.
Again, I thought, like, again, you read a book, or you read a book and maybe a secondary source. I mean, if you said to yourself, oh, this is a really good article on Hamlet, like, Hamlet and his dispute, and is the ghost real? Anyway, and you just say, oh, this is really, really good. And you have them read an article, and you say, yeah, so read Hamlet, but then, here's a 15-page article, which is really, really good, which will enlighten you in some way. And the point is, okay, instead of that, you're having them watch a half-hour lecture.
Yeah.
Because you think, yeah, this is good. This will, again, instead of just reading everything, you're like, you can listen to it. And again, a lot of more people we found this with Erin and I found this again, that's why we tried to make everything into also, when we could, podcasts, because people are doing a lot of listening to podcasts now, right? They're doing this, that, or the other thing. They're driving in. We have a lot of students here at the University of St. Thomas, for example, who commute. And then from Katy or Sugar Land, you don't know anything about Houston, but it's like an hour commute. Our students commute an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes every day, coming in and then going out. And so what are they doing? And the answer is, some of them are listening to podcasts.
See, to me, part of the big thing with theology and philosophy, especially at the early stages, is the vocabulary. Okay, and so the vocabulary is certainly very clear in those early ICU videos, if you will. That would be good. I have a lot of the on-campus students who will take an online course with me. And I say to them, go read this first, then read the lecture, then go back and read this again. All right. Yeah. So that's what you could do with those tapes. And it would be a different way of people learning, because there are different learning styles. So certainly, I don't know if I'd want to tell somebody that I wanted them to memorize the meaning of the hypostatic union on a podcast in their car. But, so I don't know that really is very useful. I think the podcast is useful, but I don't think it's something people can't learn serious matter like this while they're driving.
It depends on what you're doing. But again, people seem to like podcasts, and people seem
they do.
Get a lot out of the podcast. And here's the only other thing I'll say about the lectures, which is to say, I did do this as a distance course. A kind of hybrid, again, but it was a summer thing, summer 2, so, it was 5 or 6 weeks or whatever. And one of the biggest issues, as you know, I'm sure, with distance courses is people start and they don't finish.
Oh, yes. Right. An enormous amount don't finish.
And I knew that. And so I built in deadline. I said, look, you can't go more than 24 hours in advance, but you can't go more than 24 hours. Anyway, the point is, I started that class with 21 students. You come in and you're like, this is not for me. Or I know I am working a lot during the day. I think it was a kid in Saudi Arabia. And he said, I can't do the times. And so anyway, but I started with 20 students and I finished with 20 students. Every single one of them finished. Yeah. Right. So I was very pleased because, again, I knew that this was the biggest issue, was that somehow, just students start and then they fall out, right? That they get engaged, but then they're not really engaged. Anyway, so the way I did it, we finished up everybody, again, except the first kid who dropped the first day.
We don't really have that many who drop here. We have people who will lag behind for a while and try to catch up, but we don't have a tremendously high dropout rate of any course. But I take MOOCs all the time on edX and Coursera, and there'll be, like 50,000 people starting, but 20 finish.
20 finish, exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but I think in other schools, they do have more of a dropout rate. The thing here is that the people who come here find us because of our particular focus, so we're a very more or less traditional Catholic institution. And so we do attract a particular kind of student, I think, and they tend to stay because they know not every place they can go is going to be like us.
Right. No, good. And there's 2 people raising their hands, I see, actually, so.
Well, I have to say that this has been such an engaging presentation.
Wait, Professor Rex had a question. Sebastian, can you let Professor Rex ask a real quick question? I think you're trying to sum her up, but I just...
Oh, thanks. I'm the director of admissions, and I've probably accepted over 900 graduate students over the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. Doctors, lawyers, judges. It's incredible, the people that we have studying at Holy Apostles. And recently I found a problem because I thought some of the basic courses are CD sets by Father Brian Mulady. And it's perfect for you because you can listen to the lectures while you're commuting in your car. And I had someone say, well, I don't have a CD player anymore. My car.
Yeah, we're addressing that.
It's Bluetooth, and they have their Tesla, and they don't have, a way to play the CDs.
Right.
While they're traveling, commuting, an hour each way.
Well, that's why our stuff is MP3 now, right? We digitized everything. And so by digitized, I don't mean disc. I mean, we kind of went right to MP3s.
So this would be very good if one of their assignments is to listen to Monsignor William Smith, who I actually met and knew, and I worked at St. Joseph Seminary. Those courses that you have of fundamental moral theology or sacrament of matrimony. I mean, he was 30 years teaching moral theology and matrimony. He was an international scholar. I mean, those tapes are probably priceless. I've never listened to them. I'd love personally to listen to those tapes. And it would probably be a whole course, those tapes of Monsignor William Smith, and if they can be listened to as part of your course. Like I taught Catholic bioethics, and I used Dr. William May's book on Catholic bioethics and the gift of human life. I just wish I had him giving those classes, and then I would just, comment on, because I focused on his book. That's really what I was teaching. So then I would supplement it. And I think you have a great, and then one last thing, the Angelicum Academy, if you would maybe reach out to Pat Carmack, who's the president, because he actually purchased great courses, the Great Courses series, right? Mm-hmm. So he actually negotiated and purchased, because those are some of the best professors in the world teaching all kinds of different courses. And then he arranged that he would make classes out of them because it's all online. And so he actually did, he formatted these lectures that are, audio and made it into a regular course with exams, tests, quizzes, and they're also college level. I mean, high school students can take those courses at the high school level, but they're also, it's ACE. I guess it's American Council on Education. Right. That accredits their courses. So he got those courses all accredited. Right. And they can be taught.
And all those are really good. I mean, I listen to, the Great Courses. I just wish that, then we could slip out their whole sort of mostly theology, or not all their philosophy, but anyway, and then just sort of shove in ours. And then, people be like, don't take that one from that guy. You just listen to, Brian Mulady talk about nature and grace. Don't, this other thing. Anyway, but.
In the time we have left, let me do something real quick. This is the content. This is everything that you've got. And this is the stuff that is currently on icucourses.com that's moving over to the new site. Erin, is there anything that you'd like to point to or to talk about? I know that the natural law class is now available on the new site. In terms of rollout or in terms of content or anything in the remaining minutes of our show today?
Yes, well, the main transition is going to be this current site that we're looking at is it's an e-commerce site. So it's how we've been selling our courses as texts for self-enrichment and for people to use in classes. And our new site, the focus is more going to be on showcasing each course. So each course page is going to have a video that links to the YouTube playlist, and the podcast will be on each course page as well. So our new website is sort of going to our home for where the courses are, but we're really expecting people to stumble across them on YouTube or in podcasts. And our effort is just to make sure that we are wherever people already are. So the podcast, especially, I when you're mentioning the difficulty of getting the CDs to people in modern situations, that's the kind of thing that almost anyone with a smartphone has a podcast app they already use, and they can just type in Catholic Thinkers and find our materials there. So it is going to be largely the same. I mean, our content is going to be the same, but it will function a little bit differently. And this website.
So in other words, we have a new website, which Erin has been doing, and we've been going over with the board and et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I didn't ask her I didn't think it would necessarily be relevant, but to show you, we've been showing it to the board, and Erin's continuing to work on it to get it, so that it's very, very easy to use. And then people can see, sort of like the teaching company, only without charging, right? People can see very clearly, what the lectures are and click on things. And then, they get the MP3 right there. Anyway, so yeah, basically the point is this will give you a sense of what we have, and but it doesn't give you a sense of what the new website will look like.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it, and it's great. I like this one well enough, but again, you can see that it's kind of like, charges and we've been doing a little of that, but the new one will be even better and easier and more, again, tell you more about each course as you go through.
Certainly. Is there anything on the new website to show yet? Is there an active link, or is it still?
No, unfortunately, it's the link. You can put the URL in, but it'll give you a page that tells you we're under construction. So
sure. What about the natural law course? How do we get access to that for those who would like to take a look at it to gauge the quality of the program?
The one by Charlie Rice?
That's the one.
That is one we did put that out into some emailing last week. So we have a link I could share.
Please do, and I'll put it in the show notes for people who are going to be watching this after the fact. So any final remarks? I know we're just past the end of our hour. The two of you have been great. I have to have you back on again. And, we do have WCAT Radio, which is a podcast station now. It used to be, we used to do live radio, but it's what you were saying, Dr. Smith. People like podcasts. And we've had almost 300,000 listeners of 10,000 podcasts in the past 4 years. It's something that really explodes. This kind of content with that kind of distribution system is something that would really help disseminate this into the Catholic universities, into the Newman college schools, and particularly into the classes that we teach as additional resources for us at Holy Apostles. You're already global. This is just taking those partnerships out a whole new door.
Yeah.
We'd be very grateful. Again, if you want to do one of these shows, either with our little friends over at what we call it, the Open Door or whatever, or just in some other one, I'd certainly be willing to do it. Erin might be available, but anyway, we can have a discussion in conjunction with Holy Apostles College, or just me talking to those guys about Catholic Thinkers, ICU, whichever you think is best, that works for the shows that you have, which I only know the Open Door. Open Door, isn't that right, Sebastian?
The Open Door, they're our longest running show. There's about 72 of them, WCAT Radio.
Right. But, whatever works. But we'd love that. Again, our goal is because particularly now, because we're not charging and we just wanted to cover our costs, is just to get stuff out there, right? And be a service to Catholic education and to Catholic the intellectual life of people in the country.
Dr.
I'm sure is your mission as well, right? So
we have a common mission, and we move forward in faith together. Together we're stronger. All tides, a rising tide raises all boats.
We can hope, right? My boat usually gets swamped when the tide comes in, but that's just because I got a leaky boat. So anyway, I can't blame the tide on
It's like old sailors never die; they just get a little dinghy.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Oh, God.
Right.
All right. So, Dr. Randall Smith and Erin Dowdy, thank you so very much for being with us today. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This has been probably one of our most exciting programs, or shows in a while. And no offense to any previous speakers, of course. This is great. You guys are wonderful. So, thank you both, and have an excellent week. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Erin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.